because we tend to, and I'll say we because, I came to this work honestly. I am a trauma survivor. So that being the case, I was a chest breather. Oh. And I found that out, big surprise, in a yoga class, because I had an instructor that was going to do a breath practice.
Sure, yeah.
And said, I want you to do this thing.
Yeah.
And just notice where your breath is mostly. And I was mostly a chest breather. And she said, you're a reverse breather. And I went, huh?
What?
And I was like, what? And so I learned firsthand. Is it fixable? Absolutely. But it requires you to let the muscles of your belly go. And in our society, that the other thing is societal. If you're going to relax your belly, you're not going to be really comfortable in the world right now, because if you're a woman, you want to hold that belly in so you look nice and thin, and if you're a guy, and you were in the army, it's like suck that gut in, soldier, right?
Yeah.
So the reality is you have to kind of go against conditioning, societal conditioning, but also more important than societal conditioning is you have to go against your natural instinct at this point to say, I need to breathe fully. And because your diaphragm can't move if your stomach is flat against your rib cage, you can't take in a full breath. So you're really only getting about a third of the oxygen and breath that you should be getting. Okay, the capacity that you should have, which will tell you if you're feeling anxious a lot, and anxiety is a big symptom of trauma. And if you're feeling anxious a lot, try taking a full deep breath with your belly relaxed. If you do that a couple of times, you might even find yourself yawning because your body is going, oh, finally, I'm getting some oxygen, yay, and it wants more.
Yeah, well, it's fascinating to me, and I've had a couple of people on the show when I had first gotten started that specialized in how societal norms, what's expected of people, and one of the most common issues, I guess, for lack of a better word, was what people feel that society expects them to look like.
Right.
And we had a whole show on body shaming and all of that. And one of the main issues was, and it wasn't, it was a majority of the test subjects, I guess you'd call them, were women, but it does apply to men too. About when you say suck the gut in. Right?
Sure.
You're a size 12 trying to fit into a size 10. If you're a guy, you're a 38 trying to squeeze into a 36, and then no one likes that little mushroom, muffin top. And you walk around all day with all sucked in and everything. And then, the joke is when you get home, everything comes off and, you're like twice the size. But part of that, if you're dealing with trauma already, is it even more difficult when that is compounded with trying to, look your best, or trying to fit this image that society puts on you, especially,
totally.
I would imagine for women. You all got way more to deal with than we do.
I won't argue with you there. I think women do have that perception of what's appropriate for us to look like going on a lot. But the other piece of it, I think, too, is that we become conditioned to that. And it's not just societal, but there's body shaming that happens at home.
Oh, yeah.
Kids get that. They're going through those awkward stages of growth, and they're starting to, they get a little heavier before they get a little taller. And that's just what happens. Yeah. It's like, oh, you're putting on some weight there. We better cut you. You need to go on a diet, right? It's like, you're 12.
Really? Enjoy those Twinkies, man. Come on.
Well, I don't know about Twinkies, but the sugar is not good for you. But aside from that, the bottom line is that we shame our children in that way too. And they watch it in us and they emulate what we do. So that becomes part of that picture too.
Sure, yeah.
Right? It's like, oh no, I can't eat that because I'm on a diet.
Yeah.
Gosh, you got big quickly. Look at that belly you got on you, girl.
And that's trauma too. I guess if you're young and then those awkward years aren't just awkward at home. They're awkward at school and everywhere. And I could definitely see how that would affect as you get older.
As you know, the thing is yes, that's totally true, and that would be true for anybody. But if you are a complex trauma survivor, meaning you have a home that has that is not functional or not well functional, maybe you have a parent that has a problem with alcohol or drugs. Maybe somebody in your family is violent. Maybe your parents divorced. Maybe one of your relatives, close relatives, mother, father, brother, sister died when you were young. Maybe there's verbal abuse in your home. I mean, I'm giving a partial list here, and I want to talk about something that has been around actually for a very long time. It's called the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study. It was done in 1988 and published in 1989 by Kaiser Permanente and the CDC.
Okay.
And it is a list of 10 questions. And what they say, what they called it then is adverse childhood experiences.
Okay.
And how that relates is these adverse experiences are also harbingers of trauma, of complex trauma. But what they related them to at the time was not that complex trauma issue, because that wasn't even
a thing yet.
It wasn't even thought about, even in psychological circles. What they were relating it to was physical health, which is fascinating. So what they found is that if you answer those 10 questions and you have one adverse experience, I'm trying to remember the numbers. And if you go to the ACEs study online and you can find it, you can look under either ACEs or ACEs Too High. And there's a couple of other ones that are with that same nomenclature. They have actually expanded it over the years. And I'm grateful for that, because initially it was very limited. But what they found, I want to say a 25% increase if you have one ACE, one adverse experience, in diabetes, cancer, heart disease, insomnia, drug addiction, et cetera, physical issues as well as emotional issues. And they were focusing on the physical at that point in time. Wow. So, and what they said at the end of that study was that if you took a room full of 10 people, probably about 4 in 10 would have at least one ACE, one adverse experience in their history. That's been revised.
Okay.
Now it's like 7 in 10.
Wow.
So where this came into reality for me initially was because I was a yoga teacher when I read the ACEs study. I went, well, darn it. That means that if I have 10 students in my class, 4 of them are trauma survivors, that's not cool. We've got to figure out how to deal with that, because the truth is people who have trauma history don't react the same as people who grow up in a healthy environment. And they don't react the same to suggestion. They don't react the same to touch. They don't react the same to languaging. Wow. And I'll give you a personal example. I think I said I am also a trauma survivor.
Yes, you did.
So in my first yoga class, the thing that just really kept me coming back was the reality that when a teacher would give me an instruction to do something, I frequently couldn't figure out what the heck to do. My body, and I thought I was, I'm flexible, I'm cool, I'm,
I got this.
I got
no,
this.
You
I
don't.
can do yoga. I can do this. I couldn't figure out where to put my feet. I couldn't figure out how to turn my body. She would say, and I'd be like, do what? And when that happened, of course, I'd be looking around the room trying to figure out what's everybody else doing, right? Because I couldn't make it make sense. And I recognized that I couldn't take her instruction and follow it, and I couldn't figure out why.
Wow.
And it wasn't until years later I read a book. It's called The Body Keeps the Score by Dr. Bessel van der Kolk. And I found myself highlighting and underlining and going, oh my God, this is my life. And I went... And he talked about not that body dysmorphia, not being able to be present in your body, not being able to make things make sense. Yeah. Okay. And I went, that's me. That was me. Okay. I got it. what also happened in that yoga class is my instructor would walk around the room, and if some of you have been in yoga classes and you know what I'm talking about, she would do something called Ujjayi Breath, which sounds like this. It's that very deep breathing. It kind of sounds like Darth Vader.
I was just thinking
it kind of
that,
sounds like Darth Vader. So we have a negative input with that already, right? It kind of sounds like Darth Vader. Now that breath is supposed to be good for focus and energy when you're doing, strong yoga poses. But she would walk around the room like that with her arms crossed, which you guys can't see, of course, but my arms are crossed.
It's on video.
This is on video too? Yeah. Oh, okay, cool. Okay, hi guys. With their arms crossed. And walk up behind you and check out your posture and make adjustments if there was something, if there was, you'd move your shoulders or, she would touch your shoulders or do whatever. And this woman would walk up behind me with that breath. And so I knew she was there. And then I would see her out of the corner of my eye and her arms would be crossed. And she'd stand there for a minute, and then she'd walk away. She never adjusted me. And I want to tell you what I know today is very different from what I understood then. What I understood then from that was, that she's doing that breath, and I knew what Ujjayi Breath was, but that didn't connect.
It didn't connect with you.
I didn't hear it that way.
Hold on. It's the joys of having a semi-outdoor studio.
Yes, I got it.
All right, continue.
Okay, so she did that breath, and my thought was, she is disapproving of me. Ooh. I am not in the right position. I'm doing something wrong. So I'm trying to straighten up and I'm trying to do it the best I think I know how. And of course, she's got her arms crossed, and I'm like, okay, that's a sign of disapproval.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. Yeah.
And then she would walk away, which said to me at the time, I'm not even worth adjusting. Oh, man. I'm hopeless.
Wow.
That's what my brain said. Now, here's the weirdness of this. I kept going back to that class. She was still my teacher.
Sure.
She offered a 200-hour teacher training. I took it. Mm-hmm. She offered a 300-hour teacher training afterwards. I took it. This was a woman who I thought didn't like me, and I am taking her training classes. Wow. That's kind of insane, guys. If you don't understand that, it really is. That's trauma. So putting myself in dangerous situations. I mean, it wasn't really a dangerous situation, but my perception was that it was a dangerous situation, and I was there anyway. That's what happens to trauma survivors. We think that's what we deserve. We think that's what we get. We don't like it, but we accept it. Wow. Accepting unacceptable behavior is an absolute reality with people who live through childhood trauma. Man. So I'm in her 300-hour training, and we're having a group discussion. And as we're having this group discussion, she's talking about how do you walk up behind, how do you work with people in a class, how do you adjust, how do you do things like that. And she says, well, you guys all know, you've been in my classes, so when I walk up behind somebody, I always use Ujjayi Breath so they know that I'm there, so that I don't surprise them.
So that was not what you had.
That is not what I thought was going on at all.
Yeah.
And it actually, and I didn't initially, do you know what? I didn't actually initially process that. I didn't process it as she said it. I discounted it. It wasn't until like a couple years later when I read Dr. Van der Kolk's book and understood some of the things about trauma, and I was like just working on me, trying to figure out how to shift my own trauma issues. And I went, damn, she wasn't actually being negative about me at all. She was just trying to let me know that she was present, and that's not the same thing. And I had this negative perception of this woman who was my teacher for years.
So you thought that she was just being disapproving of you.
Yes. I thought there was something wrong with me.
And that you deserve that.
Pretty much every trauma survivor thinks, is that there's something wrong with them.